I'm Maura Garvey. I'm president of Intelligas Consulting, LLC, and I've been in the gases industry for about 26, going on 27 years, and work with all the different industrial gases, but I clearly work with CO2 and helium because they're those problematic byproduct gases, so I do quite a lot of work there.
And you've just come off stage here at our CO2 conference in Nashville. Just give us a flavour of what you discussed on stage there.
Yeah, I tried to kind of give everybody a flavor for, what is the merchant market here in the U.S., the CO2 merchant market. Give them a flavor for, what are the drivers, what are the applications, what's driving demand. Give them sort of a flavor that way, but then also explain, where I know all the sourcing is, the problems with some of the sourcing, but then also talk about how the supply chain is evolving and why it's evolving, and it gets back to decarbonization. The tax credits are driving new sources. So I tried to cover the whole gambit.
So just to cover a couple of those things here, how do you see the demand for CO2? Where's it coming from? How is it growing?
Yeah, the biggest demand for CO2 is going to be in food, and that is, it's 70% is there. The beverage part is about 16%, and that actually, with the seltzers and things like that, and the hard seltzers and a lot of this new products coming out, as well as breweries, that's actually growing. That's actually growing some. Whereas the main food pieces, they're actually more on the decline because the major processing companies are trying to reduce the amount of CO2. So those are main drivers. But the biggest driver in terms of growth going forward is going to be dry ice. That has been growing, very fast over the last 5 years. And part of it driven by COVID, with the dry ice for transport, but it's the dry ice blasting. So interesting times ahead to see how that goes.
Absolutely. And to touch on regulation too, how can this impact the CO2 industry? CCUS, for example, is that a threat?
So the regulations are paying, a much bigger tax credit than what companies are getting when they're selling the feedstock to the producers to get it out into the market. So that's the carbon capture storage piece. And so, but CCUS is the utilization piece, and that we're sort of still waiting to see how that all happens. But regardless, you start taking, the CCS is taking away existing sources that are already supplying, our CO2 market, and that's not good for us because it's like we're only 0.23% of all emissions, and to disrupt a market and to disrupt the security of our food supply chain, our CO2 supply chain, all of that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we've got to do something about it.
And looking at the security of the CO2 supply chain, how do we make this more secure?
How do we
make the supply chain more secure, less susceptible to volatility?
Well, we have to make it more secure, we need to look rationally at these tax credits, and if that's going to go away, then we need to be able to promote the sources that maybe are emitting now and are fairly large but aren't close to some of these. Let's take advantage of some of those ethanol plants that can't sequester underground because the geology is not there, so they can't put in the Title VI wells, and they're not near a pipeline. Let's go after some of those, but you can also go after these new sustainable sources. There's a lot of them out there, and the beauty of those is you can put them out near the demand centers, unlike these existing sources that we're all dealing with now. You've got to transport them long distances to get the product to the customer.
Sure, and it's obviously an election year here in the US, so how could the outcome of that election impact on the CO2 industry?
I personally, this was asked back at CGA earlier in the year. They wanted to know if we have a change in our administration, is that going to affect all of this? I really don't believe so, because everybody understands we've got to decarbonize. Companies are trying to decarbonize. It's not a political, whether you're Republican or Democrat issue. It's a global issue that we all have to, get behind, and a lot of people are. So I don't see how the election's going to change it. You know, will it slow it down? It's already slowing it down because an election year causes this kind of problem. I think that's why we haven't been hearing more about increasing, you know, the CCUS credit up to be, you know, to parity. We're too busy with, you know, the election.
Fantastic. And if you had a message to those who couldn't be in the room today, what would that message be?
Oh my gosh, you need to get to these summits because this is one place where you can hear about all of the key topics on CO2, meet all the people in the industry, and it just doesn't happen. You can go to other conferences and it'll just focus on one of the pieces or something else. Here, you're going to hear about everything.
Fantastic. Maura, thank you for your time.